Alright, so I want to make a video updating everyone as usual, as well as get into some other important stuff. So let's get right into it here. Canada is up to 43,036 cases with 2,202 dead. Alberta is up to 4,017 cases with 72 dead. There's also 1,397 recovered cases with 122,447 tests. Yesterday, I believe we were at about 100 and what was it, 18, 19. So we continue to test a lot of people. I mean, just to think we've tested that many people, it's very insane. And there, like I say, there is 4,017 cases, but there's 1,397 recovered, and obviously there's people recovering every day. So again, 297 new cases yesterday. That is down from the last couple days, but it is up from the last week or so's average. So I like I said, the models have always predicted the peak to be around this time, but to be fair, the models have grossly over predicted the amount of cases and the amount of dead. I mean, you look in the states, because they're doing a little, everything's a little bigger down there, and every time even if you look in Canada too, but every time the government has released new projections, they continue to lower the estimate of the amount of people they project to die, which is a good sign, and it's also a sign that we should be coming up with a plan to reopen things. Again, I don't want to have to keep reiterating this, but so many people seem to be just content with the way things are going, and it makes no sense whatsoever. I mean, it's largely because the average person's very unintelligent when it comes to this kind of stuff. They're intelligent when it comes to their profession, but when it comes to whatever you want to call it, street smarts, economic knowledge, that kind of stuff, people are completely clueless. So, again, that's the one prediction I've been making all along, and I will continue to stand by it, is that when you look back in the history books, assuming, I mean, obviously it's not going to be books, but it's a figure of speech. Um, Assuming that the people writing them are not, non-partial, unbiased, we're gonna look back and be, the more memorable thing will be the massive recession that we're about to go in. People will talk more about that than they will about the virus. That's basically my what I've been saying for a while now, not off the start, but for a while now. In that, again, people don't seem to realize that Canada, especially, was long overdue for a recession. I made multiple videos about how bad the economy was doing and how, we could face recession anytime now. And again, the government is going to use, I mean, again, mark my word, this is something I'm incredibly, I'd say 99% chance of this. The government is going to use the recession is because of the virus. We had nothing to do with it. When in reality, the virus was just the thing that pricked the bubble, for lack of a better term. There was any infinite amount of things that would have caused this. Like I say, it was only a matter of time till something came up to where a recession was hit. And the other problem with this too is that there's another housing bubble. There's a massive bond bubble. There's bubbles basically in the entire economy, and that's why this recession I think is going to be so bad. And I mean, we're already in it. The problem is people think that because we're shut down because of the virus, that everything's going to go back to normal whenever that is, and it's not going to happen. Like I keep saying, a lot of people aren't going to have jobs to go back to, and a lot of people are going to have jobs to go back to, but the economy is going to be so weak that they're going to get laid off and they're going to lose their jobs. And again, it's the ripple effect. It's going to hit one industry, because of that other industries suffer, because of that other industries suffer, and by the end of it, every industry suffers. So again, that's one thing I want to reiterate, but I'll get into it a little more here. This is from Candice Malcolm. Now, the CBC had this student on to talk about the new student income thing. And this is from Candice Malcolm. She says, the idea that this young man wants to work on a farm and is willing to roll up his sleeve and work hard is apparently hilarious to the CBC journalist. Now, this is supposed to show that these people on the left, just how tone deaf they really are. Like, they constantly accuse people on the right of, not understanding what it's like to be in this group's shoes or that group's shoes. but yet they don't have the foggiest clue what it's like for most of these people. And the fact that you laugh at someone for wanting to work on a farm, for wanting to work hard. I mean, what are people who work on farms known for? They're known for their work ethic. But and you know it's the exact opposite of these people on the left. These people on the left just want to mooch off other people in most cases. I mean, look at CBC. They basically force, through taxation, which is, taken by people from force against their will, to pay them, and they're getting their cushy salaries. They don't have to work hard for their money. People who work on farms have to work hard for their money. And that's why that, I think these people are so smug and arrogant, is that they're like, well, why would you not want to be like us? We get, our handsome rich salaries, and we barely have to do anything. So again, that's one of the main reasons I'd say that. And again, it just goes to show just how tone deaf they really are. But anyway, this is from Dinesh D'Souza. He goes on to say the UN predicts famine and mass starvation across the world as a result of the economic shutdown. The good news from the media's point of view is that they can count the famine and starvation deaths as virus deaths, the vindication of the hysteria that caused the cataclysm. And the other thing, too, is that they'll blame capitalism, as always. Like I say, it must be nice to be these people on the left that, they can blame capitalism no matter what. If a government that's not on the left gets in, regardless of whether they believe in the free market, if anything goes wrong, it's capitalism's fault. If they implement socialism and it doesn't work out, it's capitalism's fault. It's always capitalism's fault for them. And like I say, it must be nice to do that, to be able to have this, oh, capitalism's fault, or on the left, anything goes wrong, oh, must be racism, must be sexism. Not that, it's a realistic criticism. No, it's just you're racist, you're sexist. It just goes to show just why they have such terrible arguments, is that they have those kind of things. Um, and like I say too, the UN. I mean, I don't really trust the UN, but I think that they're right when it comes to this kind of stuff. And again, what reason do they have to lie for something like this? I mean, they don't really have anything to gain by there being a mass starvation or famine. And again, that's the one thing that I can't stand about the close everything or people are going to die crowd, is that they don't compare alternatives. That this decision is, there's always costs and benefits to these kind of decisions, and the fact that they never bring up the benefits and or not, they always bring up the benefits, but they never bring up the cost, just goes to show that they haven't put any amount of thought into this kind of stuff. They're just repeating the mainstream media talking points. They're just repeating it. They haven't spent 5 seconds thinking for themselves. And that's the one thing too, is that I have a much easier time, having a conversation with someone that disagrees with me if they've at least taken the time to consider the alternatives to their opinion. But the problem with most of these people is that they really haven't, because if they have, well, guess what? They would constantly point out the fact that there's going to be massive amounts of suffering no matter what the decision is. But how I've thought about it is, I mean, I keep using the example is that in my city, the city I live in, there's been more people die of committing suicide than from the virus. There's more people that attempted suicide in one day than actively had the virus that day. So again, at least where I'm from, and I think it's fair to say this is the overwhelming majority of places. It's not always just where you live. You only care about where you live. No, it's clearly the overwhelming majority of places, and I mean it's pretty obvious in the fact that most areas that have gotten the opportunity to reopen have reopened. Um, that the amount of suffering that's going to be caused by the depression, the recession that we're going into, is going to be far more than the largely elderly crowd, where the vast majority of them are going to die very soon, anyways. Again, it makes no sense. This is from David Jacobs. He says, "This is unbelievable. Unbelievable. As of last night, Trudeau's reopened our borders to people claiming refugees from upstate New York. New York State is currently battling a massive COVID-19 outbreak. Admitting anyone from New York is grossly irresponsible." Now, again, I pointed this out yesterday that the borders are open again. And again, how does this make any sense to that? For all these people that disagree with me too, is that if you haven't had the opinion that we should have closed flights from China in February at the absolute latest, then you don't have any credibility whatsoever. Because you can't claim about, oh, I want to save lives and we got to save lives and all this kind of crap, and yet turn around and have wanted to bring in massive amounts of people from highly infected areas. That's a glaringly contradictory viewpoint. So again, if that's the viewpoint you hold, which most of those people it is, they're mostly lefties that, were wrong all along and they're still wrong. And again, they'd rather bastion their false sense of moral superiority than in reality. And it's disgusting. It's absolutely terrible that this is where we're at. Um, so this is the last thing I wanted to point out here. This is from Dan Bongino. And again, this is something I got into a little bit, but I wanted to get into it a little more. The shutdown or die, or sorry, the shut it down or people will die crowd still has yet to explain how destructive the health effects of personal bankruptcies combined with the pending hollowing out of our lockdown hospitals won't lead to deaths too. This isn't a single variable problem. And again, that's how those people view the world. And again, it just goes to show just how unintelligent and unintelligent isn't the best word. Lack of critical thinking skills would be the best way of putting it. In that, like I say, every major decision in society has costs and benefits. And whenever people point something out and don't point out the costs, and they'll always point out the benefits, but if they don't point out the costs, it goes to show you that you shouldn't listen to them. You shouldn't listen to them. And I've been pointing out all along, if we open things up, number one, if I would have been running things, we would have closed the borders much sooner. The case loads would have been much less, and we would have quarantined old folks' homes, and wouldn't even have been hit as hard. We would have kept the economy open. I think that we would have a similar amount of deaths and cases that we have right now. Meanwhile, we wouldn't have destroyed our economy. But yet at this point, let's just say we're too far gone. You can't change the past. You keep old folks home closed. And again, people, I don't understand why do people like they think that, oh, if you open things up, you have to open everything up. And it's just an excuse for them not to make a decision too. They're the kind of people, they just want to criticize, they just want to be negative. And again, they don't want to make any of these decisions. They just want to leave it up to, the big daddy government. They want to let make the decisions. And again, it doesn't make any sense, but again, that's just kind of the way they are. And like I say, the main point of this too is that people need to point out the costs and benefits. Like I say, the cost of reopening things is, yes, the case amounts will go up a little bit, but on one hand, you keep old folks' homes uh, quarantined, and you give people the option too that you can get unemployment for like 4 months. Um, and we've only been in this for about 6 weeks now. Give them the option, hey, if you want to stay home for the next month or two, go ahead. But it's not fair. Again, this idea that it's somehow just and moral that when a small group of people are suffering, that you force everybody to suffer is one of the most disgusting and immoral things I think we possibly imagined up in modern day society. It's incredibly immoral and unethical that, oh, well, because a very small percentage of people are suffering, everybody has to suffer. Again, that is the most anti-philosophical, anti-moral, anti-ethical thing what I can possibly think of, and it's absolutely terrible that's what we're at too. And I've said this a million times, but people still accuse you of it no matter what. But I'm going to reiterate it again. I I I don't want old people to die. But on the other hand, if I was in their position, I wouldn't expect for my kids, my grandkids, and my great grandkids all have to suffer. Not only that, suffer a lot. This isn't just a little bit of suffering. Like, people are going to lose their houses, people are going to lose their businesses, people are going to lose their cars, they're going to lose everything. And a lot of people are going to do it. It's not just a small percentage of people. If I'm old and I'm 80 years old, I'd be like, go ahead, kill me now. I'd rather have a better life for my kids, grandkids, and great grandkids. To me, you're an incredibly selfish a-hole if you because you want to live an extra year or two, you're going to make the next 3, 4, 5 generations suffer greatly because you want to live an extra year or two. That's just the way I think about it. Now, again, people are going to accuse you, oh, you hate old people. No, it's that I think that at least in this case, the suffering of the few doesn't outweigh the suffering of the many. Again, you'd think collectivists and these leftists would agree with that, but no, that's because the way we're currently going, we're having more and more big government, more and more regulation, more and more socialism. That's why they like it. So again, I'm gonna leave it there. If you like the video, make sure to like and subscribe. Check out my PayPal and email. I got linked in the description. I do appreciate any donations, but at the very least, just hit that like and subscribe. And last thing, as always, check out my BitChute channel as well. YouTube's gonna ban or shadow ban me at some point, so check me out there.